The Queen Who Slept Her Way to Power, The Real Strategy of Cleopatra. There are stories history tells, and then there are stories history twists. For centuries, Cleopatra has been reduced to a seductress, a woman who used beauty and charm to control powerful men. But what if that version of her story was never meant to honor her, but to diminish her? What if Cleopatra didn't sleep her way to power, but instead used perception, intelligence, and timing in a world where women were rarely allowed to rule? This is not the story of temptation. This is the story of strategy. Cleopatra was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek ruling family in Egypt that was known as much for its power as for its dysfunction. From the moment she entered the world, she was surrounded by political tension, betrayal, and ambition. Unlike many rulers before her, Cleopatra did something unexpected. She learned. She studied languages, philosophy, politics, and diplomacy. It is said she could speak multiple languages, including Egyptian, which many of her ancestors never bothered to learn. She didn't just want to rule Egypt, she wanted to understand it. But Egypt at this time was no longer the dominant power it once had been. Rome was rising, expanding, and watching closely. Cleopatra knew that survival would not come from isolation, it would come from positioning. When her father died, Cleopatra ascended to the throne alongside her younger brother, as tradition required. But tradition was fragile, and power even more so. It didn't take long before she was pushed out, exiled from her own kingdom by those who feared her intelligence and influence. Most people would have disappeared into history at that point. Cleopatra did not. Instead, she waited, watched, calculated. At the same time, Rome was in chaos. A powerful general named Julius Caesar had just emerged victorious from civil war and arrived in Egypt. Cleopatra saw an opportunity, not for romance, but for restoration. According to legend, she had herself smuggled into Caesar's quarters, hidden inside a rug or linen sack. Whether myth or truth, what matters is this: she made sure she was seen. And when she was, she didn't present herself as weak or desperate. She presented herself as indispensable. Cleopatra understood something deeply psychological. Powerful men are not controlled by beauty alone. They are drawn to intelligence, to confidence, to someone who can match them. She spoke to Caesar not as a subject, but as an equal. She offered him something he needed: stability in Egypt, loyalty in a region critical to Rome's survival, and in return, Caesar backed her claim to the throne. Was there attraction? Likely. Was there intimacy? Possibly. But more importantly, there was alignment. Cleopatra regained her throne not because she seduced Caesar, but because she made herself politically valuable. Years later, after Caesar's assassination, Rome once again fractured. And once again, Cleopatra faced a choice: fade into the background or reposition herself in a shifting world. This time, the rising power was Mark Antony, a man known for his charisma, strength, and appetite for luxury. When Cleopatra met Antony, she didn't arrive quietly. She arrived on a golden barge, dressed like a goddess, surrounded by luxury, music, and spectacle. It wasn't just an entrance, it was a performance, a message. She wasn't asking for attention, she was commanding it. Because Cleopatra understood something most people don't. Power is not just about what you are, it's about what people believe you are. Her relationship with Antony has often been painted as passionate, indulgent, even reckless. But beneath that surface was strategy. Together they formed an alliance that strengthened her position and challenged Rome's internal balance of power. Egypt flourished under her rule. Wealth increased, stability returned. She was not a puppet. She was a partner in a political game that spanned continents. But power always attracts opposition. In Rome, another figure was rising, Octavian, who would later become Augustus. He saw Cleopatra not as a queen, but as a threat. And to destroy a threat, you don't just defeat them, you redefine them. Octavian launched a campaign not just of war, but of narrative. He painted Cleopatra as a manipulative seductress, a foreign temptress who corrupted Roman men, a woman who used her body to gain power. It was a story that spread easily, because it was easier for the world to accept that version of her than the truth. The truth was far more dangerous. Cleopatra was a woman who understood politics better than many men, a ruler who maintained Egypt's independence longer than expected, a strategist who navigated one of the most complex power struggles in ancient history. But history is often written by those who win. After the defeat of Antony and Cleopatra, her story was sealed in Roman words, shaped by Roman perspectives, and the image that survived was not of a brilliant queen, but of a woman reduced to desire. Yet even in her final moments, Cleopatra remained in control. Rather than be paraded as a trophy in Rome, she chose her own ending. Her death, whether by asp or other means, became one last act of autonomy, one final refusal to be turned into something she was not. Cleopatra's story is not about sleeping her way to power. It is about understanding how power works in a world that underestimates you. She used what she had, her presence, her intellect, her timing, not as weakness, but as tools. She read people, she read situations, and she positioned herself exactly where she needed to be. So when you hear her story, question it. Because sometimes the most powerful women in history are not remembered for what they did, but for what others needed the world to believe about them. And perhaps that is Cleopatra's greatest legacy. Not just that she ruled, but that even now, thousands of years later, we are still trying to understand her. Thank you so much for watching.